out my way, bitch. I own you. Oh, hell no. Back up. Let's go.
Time for you to step down. Last few years been really tough.
Coaching in Richmond, it doesn't change our plans for your future.
Scoring, assists, steals, basketball scholarship at George Mason University.
Nor is it the debate team, Mr. Lyle. But you're right.
I got it.
What that mean?
Good up.
Harmony.
We had another good week.
Stop! It's soda, all right? So why don't you just go back downstairs?
Push it hard. Ball's coming to you, Kim. Run Linda. Hopefully, all right?
Sorry about the thing.
It's okay.
I see you.
Lock on the gym and force them to meet you in the library. Are you crazy?
Hold on, man.
Yeah, I like that. What?
And Miss New Year.
We're in.
I had a choice to make.
Time out, sir. Time. Come here.
Junior, get back.
Which team I choose? St. Francis?
What's my hometown?
Richmond!
What we love!
Richmond!
Hello friends, if you are looking for a complete and in-depth review of Coach Carter 2005, you have come to the right place. In today's video, we will break down the full story of this inspiring sports drama following a high school basketball coach who refuses to let winning become more important than education, discipline, and the future of his players. We will explore the struggles inside the team, the challenges faced by the young athletes, and the powerful lessons that turn a basketball season into a journey of personal growth. So make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and let's get started. The story begins at Richmond High School in California, where the basketball team is preparing for another difficult season. The school has a reputation for academic struggles, and many of the students face challenges outside the classroom that make it difficult to imagine a successful future. Basketball is one of the few things that gives many of the young players a sense of purpose. They dream about winning games, earning respect, and possibly receiving opportunities to continue playing after high school. But behind those dreams are problems that cannot be solved simply by scoring points on a basketball court. Into this environment comes Ken Carter, a former Richmond student and successful businessman who has been asked to return to his old school as the basketball coach. Carter knows the neighborhood and understands the difficulties these young men are facing because he experienced many of them himself. When he arrives, however, he immediately realizes that the team needs much more than basketball training. The players lack discipline, their attitudes are often disrespectful, and several of them are struggling academically. Carter decides that if he is going to coach them, he will demand more from them than simply winning games. From his first meeting with the players, Carter makes it clear that his coaching style will be different. He expects everyone to show respect, arrive on time, work hard, and take responsibility for their actions. The players are surprised because they are accustomed to doing things their own way. Some of them believe basketball should be about talent and competition rather than rules and academic expectations. Carter refuses to compromise. He tells them that they will follow his standards if they want to be part of his team. The players initially react with frustration. They believe Carter is being too strict and that his rules will make basketball less enjoyable. Some of them have become comfortable with the way things were before he arrived. They are used to coaches focusing mainly on the games, but Carter immediately changes the atmosphere. He demands that the players address him respectfully, attend classes, maintain their grades, and treat one another as teammates. He understands that these rules will create resistance, but he also knows that without discipline, their basketball success will mean very little. Among the players is Timo Cruz, a talented but troubled teenager whose attitude immediately puts him in conflict with Carter. Cruz is angry, impulsive, and determined to prove that he does not need anyone telling him what to do. Carter sees potential in him, but he also sees the danger of allowing that potential to be wasted. Instead of simply giving Cruz a praise on the team because of his talent, Carter makes him understand that being part of the team requires commitment and responsibility. Another important player is Jason Lyle, one of the team's strongest athletes and a leader on the court. Jason understands basketball well and wants to succeed, but Carter expects him to become a leader in other areas as well. The coach knows that talented players can influence everyone around them, so he pushes Jason and the other senior players to set an example. The team slowly begins realizing that Carter is not interested in creating individual stars, he wants them to become a disciplined group. Carter's rules soon become a major source of conflict. The players are required to sign contracts agreeing to meet certain academic and behavioral standards. For them, the idea of signing a contract with their basketball coach seems strange. They are teenagers who want to play basketball and they do not understand why their grades should matter so much to someone coaching them. Carter, however, sees the bigger picture. He knows that basketball will eventually end, but education can give them opportunities that last much longer. As practices begin, Carter works the players harder than they have ever experienced. He demands effort, teamwork, and discipline during every session. Mistakes are corrected immediately, and laziness is not accepted. The players complain about the intensity, but Carter remains consistent. He knows that talent alone will not take them far. If they want to compete against stronger teams, they must learn to trust one another and follow a system. The team begins improving, but the players still struggle to accept Carter's methods. Some believe he is trying to control their lives, while others slowly begin understanding that his strict approach comes from genuine concern. Carter does not want them to see basketball as their only opportunity. He wants them to understand that they have abilities beyond the court and that their decisions now can determine what kind of future they will have. As the first games approach, the players begin seeing small changes in themselves. They communicate better, work harder, and start taking their responsibilities more seriously. Carter's methods are still difficult, but the team begins developing a sense of unity that was missing before. The players are learning that discipline is not simply about obeying a coach. It is about learning how to control their own choices. But Carter's biggest challenge has only begun. Winning games may help him earn the players' respect, but changing their attitudes toward education and their future will be much harder. As the season gets underway, Carter is about to discover just how much resistance he will face from the players, their families, and even the school itself. Coach Carter's strict approach quickly begins changing the atmosphere around the Richmond basketball team. But the players are not ready to accept his expectations without a fight. He has made it clear that basketball will not be treated as an excuse for ignoring school, and every player must follow the contract they signed. At first, many of them believe the rules are temporary and that Carter will eventually relax once the season begins. Instead, he becomes even more demanding. He expects them to attend classes, complete their assignments, respect their teachers, and maintain the grades required to remain on the team. For players who have never been held to such standards, the change is frustrating. They want Carter to focus on basketball, but he keeps reminding them that their education is more important than any game they will ever play. The players also begin adjusting to Carter's demanding practices. He pushes them physically and mentally, teaching them that talent means very little without discipline. The team is forced to run difficult drills, practice defensive movements, improve their passing, and learn how to play together instead of relying on individual ability. Carter watches every detail and refuses to accept careless behavior. When one player fails to follow instructions, the consequences affect the entire team, forcing everyone to understand that their actions are connected. Slowly, the players begin realizing that Carter is trying to create something more than a group of talented individuals. He wants them to become a team that can trust one another under pressure. Timo Cruz continues struggling the most with Carter's rules. Cruz is talented and aggressive, but his attitude makes it difficult for him to accept authority. He believes he can succeed through his natural ability and does not understand why Carter expects him to change his behavior. Carter sees something different. He recognizes that Cruz has potential, but he also knows that potential means nothing if the young man cannot control his anger and make responsible choices. Instead of giving Cruz special treatment, Carter holds him to the same standards as everyone else. Cruz becomes frustrated and eventually finds himself pushed to prove that he really wants a place on the team. Meanwhile, Jason Lyle and the other senior players begin understanding the importance of Carter's leadership. They may not agree with every rule, but they can see that the team is becoming more organized. Players who once argued constantly are beginning to communicate during practice, and the intensity of the training starts producing results. Carter teaches them that winning is not simply about having the best scorer. It is about preparation, teamwork, discipline, and the ability to remain focused when a game becomes difficult. The players slowly begin carrying those lessons from practice into their everyday lives. As the season approaches, the team starts attracting more attention. Richmond's players are talented enough to compete, and Carter's methods are beginning to produce a noticeable difference. The athletes become more confident because they know exactly what is expected of them. But Carter is careful not to let early success change his priorities. He continues reminding them that basketball is only one part of their lives. He wants them to understand that a successful season means very little if they leave school without the education needed to build a future. The players soon discover that Carter's contract has consequences beyond the basketball court. Their academic performance is being monitored, and anyone who fails to meet the required standards risk losing the opportunity to play. This creates tension because several players are struggling in their classes. Some have fallen behind because they never developed strong study habits, while others simply never believed their grades mattered. Carter refuses to make excuses for them. He tells the players that if they want the privileges that come with being on the basketball team, they must accept the responsibilities as well. At first, the players think Carter is making their lives unnecessarily difficult. They complain that they have practices, games, homework, and responsibilities at home. Carter listens but refuses to lower the standard. He understands that many of them have been told for years that their circumstances limit what they can achieve. He wants to challenge that belief. Instead of accepting the idea that basketball is their only chance at success, he wants them to recognize that education can open doors that basketball may never reach. The team's early success begins changing the players' attitudes toward Carter. They start realizing that his strict methods are helping them become more disciplined athletes. Their communication improves, their defensive effort becomes stronger, and they begin playing with greater confidence. Even Cruz starts understanding that Carter is not trying to destroy his opportunities. He is trying to force him to become the kind of person who can create better opportunities for himself. However, Carter's demands are about to create a much bigger conflict. The players are beginning to improve on the basketball court, but some of them are still struggling academically. Carter has made a promise that he will not compromise his standards even if it means making difficult decisions. As the first academic reports begin arriving, he is forced to confront the consequences of that promise. The players are about to learn that Coach Carter is serious when he says that education comes before basketball. Their winning record may be growing, but the real test of the team will not happen during a game. It will happen when Carter has to decide whether their academic failures should prevent them from playing. The first real test of Coach Carter's philosophy arrives when the players begin realizing that his contract is not just a set of rules they can ignore whenever it becomes inconvenient. Carter has made it clear that every player must take responsibility for his education, and now the team's academic performance is becoming a serious concern. Some of the players are struggling to keep up with their schoolwork, while others have never developed the discipline needed to study consistently. Carter refuses to accept excuses. He knows that many of these young men have been told that basketball is their only chance to escape difficult circumstances, and he wants to challenge that belief before it becomes permanent. As the basketball season continues, the team starts becoming more successful on the court. The players are learning Carter's system and beginning to trust one another. Their confidence grows with every victory, and the school community starts paying more attention to the team. For the players, winning feels like proof that Carter's demanding methods are working. But Carter does not allow the excitement to distract him from the academic requirements he established from the beginning. He continues checking on their grades and reminding them that a winning record will not matter if they fail to prepare themselves for life beyond high school. Timo Cruz struggles particularly hard with the changes. His talent makes him valuable to the team, but Carter refuses to allow talent to become an excuse for poor behavior. Cruz is forced to confront the fact that being a good basketball player does not automatically make him a responsible person. He wants respect from his teammates, but Carter teaches him that respect has to be earned through discipline and commitment. Cruz begins understanding that the coach is not simply trying to control him. Carter sees potential in him and wants him to develop the character needed to use that potential properly. Meanwhile, several players begin spending more time in the classroom and trying to improve their grades. The adjustment is difficult because they are not accustomed to balancing academics with the demanding schedule of a competitive basketball team. Carter encourages them to help one another instead of treating school as an individual problem. Slowly, the players begin discovering that the teamwork they use on the basketball court can also help them succeed academically. They start studying together, asking for assistance when they do not understand something, and taking their responsibilities more seriously. The change does not happen overnight, and Carter knows there will still be setbacks. Some players become frustrated when their grades do not improve as quickly as they expected. Others question whether all the extra academic work is worth the effort. Carter can because he understands that changing their habits requires time. He tells them that the purpose of education is not simply to earn a grade. It is about preparing themselves for opportunities that may appear years after their basketball careers are over. At the same time, Carter's personal life is affected by his commitment to the team. He has responsibilities outside the school and understands that coaching will require sacrifices. His decision to return to Richmond is deeply connected to his own history there. He knows what it means to grow up in an environment where expectations can be low, and he does not want his players to believe that their circumstances determine their future. His strictness comes from the belief that someone must demand more from them if they are going to learn how much they are capable of achieving. The team's growing success creates another problem. As Richmond begins winning games, more people become invested in the season. Parents, students, teachers, and supporters all want to see the team continue winning. Basketball becomes a source of pride for the school, and the players begin receiving more attention than they are accustomed to. Carter knows that this attention can become dangerous if it convinces them that winning is more important than their education. He continues reminding them that the real victory will be what they accomplish after graduation. Carter's approach begins creating disagreements with people who do not share his priorities. Some believe he is being too demanding and that the players should be allowed to focus on basketball while the school handles academics. Carter disagrees completely. He believes that the adults around these young men have a responsibility to prepare them for life, not simply help them win games. His position creates tension because a successful basketball season could bring attention and pride to the school, while Carter's academic requirements could prevent some of the best players from participating. The players themselves become caught between these expectations. They want to continue winning, but they also know that Carter is serious about the contract. Some begin taking school more seriously because they do not want to lose their place on the team. Others still struggle to understand why the coach is willing to risk the team's success over grades. Carter refuses to change his position because he believes that giving in now would send the wrong message. If he tells them that education matters only when it is convenient, then they will never truly understand the lesson he is trying to teach. As the academic situation becomes more serious, Carter prepares to make a decision that will shock the players and the entire school. He has promised that his standards apply to everyone, including the team's best athletes. The players have become accustomed to winning and expect the season to continue without interruption. But Carter is about to prove that his word matters more to him than the scoreboard. The basketball team may be developing into one of Richmond's strongest teams, but the real challenge is beginning off the court. Carter is about to face pressure from the players, their families, and the community, all while trying to keep his promise to give these young men a better future. The decision he makes next will change the entire season and force everyone to decide what matters more, winning basketball games today or building a life they can be proud of tomorrow. The situation at Richmond High becomes more complicated as Coach Carter's academic expectations begin creating serious pressure around the basketball team. The players are enjoying their success on the court, but Carter continues reminding them that winning games is not the purpose of his contract. He wants every player to understand that basketball is only one part of their future. As academic reports begin revealing that several players are falling behind, Carter realizes that the time has come to enforce the consequences he warned them about from the beginning. He refuses to make exceptions simply because the team is winning or because certain players are important to the lineup. The players are shocked when Carter makes it clear that those who are not meeting the required standards will not be allowed to continue playing. They argue that they have been working hard during practices and games, but Carter explains that effort on the basketball court cannot replace responsibility in the classroom. Some of the players become angry because they believe their coach is taking away the opportunity they have worked for. Carter remains firm, telling them that their future is worth more than a few victories during one basketball season. His decision creates immediate tension between him and the team, but he refuses to back down. Timo Cruz begins seeing Carter differently during this period. He has spent much of his time resisting authority, but Carter's consistency forces him to reconsider his attitude. Cruz understands that the coach could easily focus only on his basketball talent, yet instead, Carter keeps demanding more from him as a person. The lesson is difficult because Cruz has become accustomed to reacting with anger whenever someone challenges him. Carter refuses to respond to that anger with weakness. He pushes Cruz to prove that he can control himself, accept responsibility, and work towards something greater than temporary success. The rest of the team also begins feeling the weight of Carter's decision. Players who once complained about studying now realize that their grades can determine whether they remain part of the team. Some begin making a genuine effort to improve, while others struggle because they have spent years believing that academics were not important. Carter encourages them to take responsibility rather than blame their circumstances. He knows that many of them face difficult situations outside school, but he also believes that those difficulties should not become an excuse for giving up on their future. As word spreads through the school, parents and community members begin questioning Carter's methods. They see a talented basketball team with a chance to achieve something special, and they do not understand why the coach would risk that success over academic requirements. Carter listens to their concerns but refuses to change his position. He explains that the players need someone willing to believe in them enough to demand more from them. For Carter, lowering expectations would not be kindness, it would simply reinforce the idea that these young men are incapable of achieving more. The conflict becomes even stronger because Richmond's basketball team is beginning to attract attention. Winning games gives the school something to celebrate, and people become emotionally invested in the players' success. Carter understands that this excitement can make his decision unpopular, but he is willing to accept criticism. He believes that the players will eventually understand why he made the choice. His goal is not to take basketball away from them, his goal is to make sure they understand that basketball should be a tool for building a better life, not a replacement for one. Meanwhile, the players begin spending more time studying and trying to improve their academic performance. The process is difficult, but they start learning how to support one another. The same teamwork Carter demanded on the court begins appearing in the classroom. Players help each other with assignments, encourage one another to stay focused, and slowly begin realizing that their abilities are not limited to basketball. For some of them, this is the first time an adult has insisted that they can succeed academically just as much as athletically. Carter watches these changes carefully, knowing that the real test is whether the players will continue working when nobody is watching. He does not want them to improve their grades simply because they are afraid of losing basketball. He wants them to develop habits that will remain with them after the season ends. Every conversation becomes an opportunity to teach them about responsibility, choices, and consequences. Carter's methods may seem harsh, but his message remains consistent. Nobody else can build their future for them. The pressure eventually reaches a point where Carter's relationship with the school administration becomes strained. The school wants the basketball team to continue succeeding, while Carter insists that the academic standards must come first. He knows that his position may cost him the support of people who would rather see trophies than improved grades. But Carter is unwilling to compromise his principles. He remembers his own experience at Richmond and understands how easily talented students can lose direction when nobody expects enough from them. The players are now forced to confront a difficult reality. They cannot simply depend on Carter to solve their problems. If they want to return to the court, they must prove through their actions that they are serious about their education. The situation creates frustration, but it also begins changing them. They start understanding that Carter's contract was never about punishment. It was about giving them a standard that they had to meet if they wanted to take control of their own lives. As the academic pressure grows, the basketball court becomes strangely quiet. A team that had been full of energy and confidence is now dealing with uncertainty. The players know they have the ability to win games, but they also know that Carter will not allow them to play until they meet the conditions he established. Their future as a team depends on what they do away from the court. Carter stands by his decision despite the growing criticism. He knows that the next few days may determine whether the players truly understand his message. The question is no longer whether they can win basketball games. The question is whether they are willing to work hard enough to earn the opportunities they want. And as the pressure from the school, parents, and community continues to increase, Coach Carter prepares to defend the decision that could change the lives of his players forever. Coach Carter's decision to put academics before basketball creates a major conflict at Richmond High. The team has been winning, the players are gaining confidence, and the school is proud of their success. But Carter refuses to allow that success to distract from the promises the players made when they joined the team. When he discovers that several players are not meeting the academic requirements, he takes the difficult step of stopping basketball activities until they improve. The players are shocked because they never expected their coach to sacrifice an entire winning season over grades. Carter explains that the decision is not meant to punish them. He wants them to understand that their education must come first because basketball will eventually end, while the knowledge and habits they develop can stay with them for the rest of their lives. The reaction is immediate. Students, parents, teachers, and members of the community question Carter's decision. especially because the Richmond team has become one of the school's biggest sources of pride. Many people believe he is being unfair by taking basketball away from players who have worked hard on the court. They argue that the young men need basketball because it gives them motivation and could potentially create opportunities for their future. Carter listens to the criticism but remains firm. He believes that allowing students to ignore their education simply because they are talented athletes would send the wrong message. He is willing to become unpopular if that is what it takes to make his players understand that their future cannot depend entirely on basketball. The players themselves struggle with the decision. Some are angry because they feel they are being punished for problems they never took seriously before. Others begin realizing that Carter may have a point. They are forced to sit with their books instead of practicing, and for the first time, they have to confront the subjects they have been avoiding. The silence of the gym makes the situation feel even more serious. These young men have spent so much time thinking about the next game that they never considered what would happen when basketball was taken away. Carter wants them to experience that uncertainty because he believes it will make them understand the importance of preparing for life beyond the court. Timo Cruz is especially affected by the change. His relationship with Carter has always been complicated, but he is beginning to understand that the coach's strictness comes from a genuine belief in his potential. Cruz has always wanted to prove that he is tough enough to handle anything, yet Carter challenges him in a different way. He wants Cruz to prove that he can control his choices and work towards something meaningful. The young player begins taking his responsibilities more seriously, and his transformation becomes one of the clearest examples of how Carter's methods are beginning to affect the team. As the lockout continues, the players start studying together. Carter provides structure and expects them to use the time productively. Some students struggle at first because they are not used to sitting quietly and concentrating on schoolwork. Gradually, however, they begin helping one another. Players who understand certain subjects explain them to teammates who are struggling, and the group starts developing the same kind of teamwork in the classroom that Carter demanded on the basketball court. The experience changes the way they see one another. They are no longer simply competitors fighting for playing time. They are beginning to understand that their success can depend on helping each other. Outside the school, the controversy continues growing. Parents are divided, with some supporting Carter's standards and others demanding that he allow the players to return to basketball. The school administration also faces pressure because the team's success has brought attention to Richmond. People want the season to continue, and Carter's decision threatens to end the excitement. But Carter refuses to let public opinion determine what he believes is right. He knows that if he gives in because people are angry, the players will learn that standards disappear whenever enough pressure is applied. Carter's own connection to Richmond makes the situation even more meaningful. He remembers being a student at the same school and understands the challenges these young men face. He knows that some of them have limited support outside the basketball program, and he believes that someone has to show them that they can expect more from themselves. His goal is not simply to create better basketball players. He wants to create young men who understand responsibility, respect, discipline, and the importance of education. That mission becomes more important to him than winning any individual game. Meanwhile, the players begin making progress in their classes. Their improvement is not perfect, but they are finally taking school seriously. Carter sees the effort and recognizes that they are beginning to understand his message. He continues demanding discipline because he knows that temporary improvement is not enough. The players must prove that they can maintain their standards even when basketball eventually returns. For some of them, this is the first time they have experienced an adult who refuses to accept less than their full potential. The controversy eventually reaches a point where Carter must defend his decision publicly. He explains that the players deserve the same opportunities as anyone else, but opportunities require preparation. A basketball scholarship cannot help someone who is unable to meet academic requirements, and athletic talent cannot guarantee success after graduation. Carter wants his players to have choices. He wants them to be able to attend college, pursue careers, and build lives that are not dependent on how many points they can score. The players slowly begin understanding that Carter's decision is actually an act of belief. He believes they are capable of more, which is why he refuses to lower the standard. If he thought they were incapable of succeeding academically, he would simply allow them to focus on basketball. Instead, he demands that they prove everyone wrong, including themselves. The lesson begins changing the team's attitude. They start looking at education not as an obstacle to basketball, but as another part of becoming successful. As the days pass, the players become more determined to meet Carter's requirements. They know that returning to the court will require work, and they are finally willing to put that work in. Their progress gives Carter hope, but he also knows that the biggest challenge is still ahead. Even if they meet the academic standards, the community may not accept his decision, and the team will have to deal with the consequences of the controversy. The gym remains quiet while the players continue studying, but something important is changing inside the team. They are beginning to understand that being a successful athlete means more than winning games. It means having discipline, making responsible choices, and preparing for a future that extends far beyond high school. And as the players work to prove themselves, the battle between Coach Carter and the people demanding basketball success is about to reach its most important moment. The conflict surrounding Coach Carter's decision continues to grow as the players work to improve their academic performance. The gym remains closed to basketball, and the athletes are forced to spend their time studying instead of practicing. At first, the situation feels like a punishment, but gradually the players begin realizing that Carter is giving them an opportunity they never took seriously before. They start working together, helping one another with difficult subjects and learning how to manage their time. The experience is frustrating, especially for players who desperately want to return to the court. But Carter continues reminding them that their education cannot be sacrificed simply because they are talented basketball players. The pressure from the community becomes even stronger. Parents and supporters want the team back on the court because Richmond has been enjoying an impressive season. They believe the players should be allowed to continue competing while their academic problems are handled separately. Carter disagrees because he knows that separating basketball from education would completely defeat the purpose of the contract. He explains that the players need to understand that every privilege comes with responsibility. If they want the opportunity to represent Richmond on the basketball court, they must first prove that they can take care of their responsibilities in the classroom. The players slowly begin changing their attitude towards school. Instead of simply waiting for Carter to lift the lockout, they begin taking their assignments seriously. Some of them discover that they are capable of achieving much more academically than they previously believed. The study sessions also bring the players closer together. On the court, they had learned to trust one another during games, but now they are learning to support each other in a completely different environment. Carter watches their progress carefully and understands that this change is more important than any winning streak. Timo Cruz continues going through his own transformation. His difficult relationship with Carter has forced him to confront his attitude and the choices he has made. Cruz has always believed that strength means refusing to let anyone control him, but Carter teaches him that real strength also means controlling himself. The young player begins showing more discipline and becomes more willing to accept responsibility for his actions. His progress is not perfect, but he is finally moving in the direction Carter wanted. Instead of simply trying to prove that he is tough, Cruz begins trying to prove that he can become better. Meanwhile, some players begin thinking seriously about what they want after high school. Basketball has always been their main focus, but the academic lockout forces them to consider other possibilities. College suddenly becomes more than an abstract idea. They begin understanding that good grades can create opportunities that basketball alone cannot guarantee. Carter encourages them to think beyond the next game and imagine where they want to be several years from now. For young men who have spent most of their lives focusing on immediate problems, thinking about the future is difficult, but Carter refuses to let them ignore it. The controversy eventually reaches a critical point when members of the school community question whether Carter's decision is helping or hurting the players. Some argue that taking basketball away from them is too harsh, while others begin recognizing that the players are making genuine progress. Carter remains calm throughout the criticism because he knows why he made the decision. He is not trying to win an argument with the school or prove that he is a better coach. He simply wants his players to understand that their lives are bigger than basketball. As the academic improvements continue, the players become eager to return to the gym. They miss the competition, the energy, and the feeling of being a team. But they also understand that returning to basketball will require them to prove that they have earned it. Carter tells them that effort must become a habit, not something they do only when they are being watched. The players begin taking greater ownership of their future, and that is exactly what Carter wanted from the beginning. The situation also begins changing how the players see their coach. At first, they thought Carter was an outsider who had arrived to control them. Now they begin understanding that he is one of the few adults who has refused to give up on them. His strict rules were never designed to make their lives miserable. They were designed to make them believe that they were capable of meeting higher standards. The players may still disagree with Carter at times, but they are beginning to respect the reason behind his decisions. Carter's personal sacrifices become more noticeable as well. He has chosen to stand by the players even though the decision creates tension in his own life. Coaching requires time, energy, and patience, but Carter continues because he believes the work is worth it. He knows that a basketball season will eventually end, but the lessons he teaches can remain with the players for decades. His determination becomes an example of leadership that goes beyond winning and losing. Eventually, the players begin reaching the academic standards Carter established. Their progress gives them hope that they may soon return to the court. But even as the situation improves, Carter knows that the controversy is not over. The people who opposed his decision have not suddenly changed their minds, and the school still has to decide whether his methods are acceptable. The players may have proven themselves academically, but the larger conflict between Carter's philosophy and the community's expectations remains unresolved. The team is now more prepared than ever to return to basketball, but they are also different from the group that began the season. They have learned that discipline applies to every part of life, not just practice. They have discovered that teamwork can help them succeed in the classroom, and they have begun thinking about futures that once seemed impossible. But when basketball finally becomes possible again, the players will have to prove that everything they learned during the lockout was more than temporary. Their next challenge will be showing that they can carry Carter's lessons onto the court while continuing to take responsibility for the future he has been preparing them for. The Richmond players finally begin to understand the true purpose behind Coach Carter's strict methods. The academic lockout has forced them to confront responsibilities they once ignored, and many of them are now making genuine progress in their studies. When they return to the gym, the atmosphere feels different. They are still excited to play basketball, but they are no longer thinking only about winning the next game. Carter reminds them that returning to the court is a privilege they must continue earning through discipline, teamwork, and responsibility. The players realize that the standards they learned in the classroom must remain part of their lives on the court as well. The team returns to practice with renewed determination. Carter pushes them hard because he knows that time away from basketball has affected their rhythm. They must rebuild their conditioning, sharpen their plays, and regain the confidence they had earlier in the season. But Carter notices something important. The players are communicating better and listening more carefully than before. Their academic experience has taught them patience and cooperation, and those qualities begin appearing during practice. Instead of blaming each other when something goes wrong, they start working together to solve problems. The players also begin seeing one another differently. Before Carter arrived, many of them were focused mainly on their individual reputations. Now they understand that the success of the team depends on everyone accepting responsibility. Jason Lyle becomes a stronger leader, encouraging his teammates to remain focused even when games become difficult. Timo Cruz continues working to control his temper and make better decisions. His transformation is especially noticeable because he once believed that strength meant doing whatever he wanted. Now he is learning that true discipline means choosing the right action even when nobody is forcing him. As the team prepares for important games, Carter continues reminding them that their opponents are not the only challenge they face. The biggest challenge is maintaining the standards they have worked so hard to develop. Winning can easily make young athletes feel invincible, especially when people around them constantly praise their talent. Carter refuses to let that happen. He wants them to remain humble, focused, and responsible. He knows that the moment they believe talent alone is enough, they risk returning to the habits that created problems in the first place. The team's return to competition attracts attention from the school and the community. People are excited to see the players back on the court, and the pressure to succeed becomes stronger. The athletes feel the expectations, but they are better prepared to handle them. They have learned that pressure is easier to manage when everyone works together. Carter uses the games as opportunities to reinforce the lessons he has been teaching all season. Every mistake becomes a chance to learn, and every victory becomes a reminder that preparation matters. For some of the players, the season is also becoming a path toward college opportunities. Scouts and coaches begin taking notice of their talent, making the future seem more realistic. But Carter continues emphasizing that basketball opportunities depend on more than athletic ability. Grades, character, discipline, and personal responsibility all matter. He wants his players to understand that a scholarship is not guaranteed simply because they can score points. They must continue making the choices that will allow them to take advantage of opportunities when they arrive. The team's success also creates pressure on Carter himself. Some people who previously criticized him now want to claim the benefits of the player's improvement. Carter understands that public opinion can change quickly. When the team was struggling, his methods were questioned. Now that the players are winning a game, people are beginning to see the value of his approach. Carter, however, does not seek recognition. He remains focused on the players and their future, knowing that praise can be just as distracting as criticism. The players' relationships outside basketball also begin changing. Some of them become more serious about their families, their education, and the choices they make away from school. Carter wants them to understand that discipline cannot disappear when practice ends. The decisions they make with friends, at home, and in their neighborhoods can affect their futures just as much as their performance on the court. His message begins reaching them because they have already experienced the consequences of ignoring responsibility. Timo Cruz's journey becomes especially important as he continues trying to prove that he can change. He has made mistakes and struggled with anger, but he is now learning how to channel his energy into something productive. Carter does not expect perfection from him. Instead, he expects effort and accountability. Cruz begins realizing that the coach's belief in him is one of the reasons he is pushing himself harder. For the first time, he starts thinking seriously about the kind of man he wants to become rather than simply the kind of player he wants people to see. As the season moves forward, the team becomes stronger both physically and mentally. They understand Carter's system, trust one another, and refuse to give up when games become difficult. Their improvement is not simply the result of better basketball training, it comes from the discipline they have developed in every area of their lives. Carter has turned the team into something more than a collection of talented athletes. They have become young men who understand that success requires sacrifice. But the pressure surrounding the team is not disappearing. The players are now facing bigger games, stronger opponents, and greater expectations. Carter knows that the most important moments of the season are approaching. He has prepared his players for competition, but he also knows that the greatest test will come when they face a challenge that cannot be solved simply by scoring more points. The team is about to discover whether the lessons Carter taught them during their most difficult period will remain with them when everything is on the line. Their future, their friendships, and their dreams are all moving toward a moment where discipline and character will matter just as much as basketball talent. The Richmond basketball team enters the most important stage of the season with a new understanding of what it means to be a team. The players are no longer simply chasing victories, they have learned that every decision they make can affect their future. And Coach Carter continues reminding them that their success must extend beyond the basketball court. The pressure is becoming greater as the games become more important, but the players are now better prepared to handle it. They have developed discipline, learned to trust one another, and begun thinking seriously about their lives after high school. As the competition becomes tougher, Carter pushes his players harder during practice. He knows that talent alone will not be enough against stronger opponents. Every mistake is corrected, every play must be executed properly, and every player is expected to remain focused until the final moment. The team responds with greater confidence because they have already experienced difficult situations together. Instead of falling apart when something goes wrong, they communicate and continue working. The lessons from the academic lockout have made them more patient and responsible, and those qualities are now helping them on the court. Timo Cruz continues proving that he is capable of changing. The angry and rebellious player who once challenged almost every decision Carter made has become more disciplined. He still has a strong personality, but he is learning how to control his emotions instead of allowing them to control him. Carter recognizes the progress and gives Cruz more responsibility. The young player begins understanding that being a leader does not mean demanding attention. It means supporting teammates, accepting mistakes, and doing the work required even when nobody is watching. The team also begins attracting greater attention from people who see potential in the players. College opportunities become a realistic possibility for some of them, and the athletes start thinking about what their future could look like. Carter reminds them that this is exactly why he has pushed them so hard. He never wanted basketball to become their entire identity. He wanted it to open doors while making sure they were prepared to walk through those doors. A talented player without discipline can lose an opportunity quickly, but a student who combines athletic ability with responsibility has a much stronger chance of building a successful future. Outside the gym, however, the players still face personal challenges. Carter understands that basketball cannot protect them from every problem. Some of the young men deal with difficult family situations, pressure from their neighborhoods, and decisions that could easily pull them away from their goals. Carter encourages them to think before acting and to understand that one careless choice can affect everything they have worked for. His message is not always easy to hear, but the players are beginning to appreciate it because they have already seen how discipline can change their lives. The team's growing success creates a new kind of pressure. People who once doubted Carter's methods now expect the players to continue winning. The school community becomes excited about the possibility of a deep postseason run, and the athletes feel the weight of those expectations. Carter reminds them that they cannot allow outside opinions to control their performance. They must focus on the fundamentals, trust their preparation, and remember why they started working so hard in the first place. As the games become more intense, Richmond discovers that confidence can be both helpful and dangerous. The players are talented enough to believe they can beat anyone, but Carter warns them against becoming careless. Strong teams can lose when they stop respecting their opponents. He teaches them to remain focused regardless of the score and to understand that every possession matters. The players begin realizing that maturity is not only about knowing how to win, it is also about knowing how to respond when things do not go their way. The bond between the players becomes stronger as the season progresses. They have gone through conflict, disappointment, academic pressure, and criticism together. Those experiences have created a level of trust that did not exist when Carter first arrived. They now understand that their teammates are not simply people competing for playing time. They are friends who have shared difficult experiences and learned from one another. The team begins playing with greater unity because they know that everyone is working toward the same goal. Carter continues watching their development with pride, but he remains demanding. He knows that success can disappear quickly if the players stop working. He refuses to let them believe that their progress is complete. Even when they win, he looks for areas where they can improve. His approach sometimes frustrates the players, but they now understand that his criticism is designed to make them better rather than discourage them. The players also begin realizing that Carter's greatest lesson has little to do with basketball techniques. He has taught them that they are responsible for their own choices. They cannot blame their circumstances forever, and they cannot depend on someone else to create their future. If they want better lives, they must work for them. That idea becomes increasingly important as the season moves toward its most difficult games. The pressure eventually reaches a new level as Richmond prepares for major competition. The players know that every game could determine whether their season continues. Their opponents are strong, the expectations are high, and the margin for mistakes is becoming smaller. Carter tells them to trust the work they have done and remain together under pressure. He knows that the real test of his coaching will come when the team faces adversity. The players step onto the court with more than just basketball talent. They carry the lessons they have learned throughout the season. They understand the importance of preparation, teamwork, responsibility, and self control. They also know that Carter believes in them enough to demand their best. That belief gives them confidence even when the competition becomes difficult. But as Richmond moves closer to the biggest games of the season, another challenge is waiting. The players will soon discover that reaching the next level requires more than talent and determination. They will have to prove that the discipline they developed can survive the pressure of the biggest stage. And Coach Carter knows that the most important part of their journey is still ahead. The Richmond basketball team enters the final stretch of the season with everything they have learned being put to the test. The players have become stronger, more disciplined, and more confident, but the pressure surrounding them is greater than ever. Every game now carries more importance, and the team understands that one mistake could end their hopes of continuing their successful season. Coach Carter keeps reminding them that preparation and teamwork matter more than individual talent. The players have spent months learning how to trust one another, and now they must prove that those lessons can hold together when the competition becomes intense. The team's success has also changed the way people see them. Players who were once underestimated are now receiving attention from the school and the wider basketball community. Some of them begin thinking seriously about college and the possibility of continuing their education through basketball. Carter is proud of their progress, but he does not allow the attention to make them careless. He reminds them that opportunities are earned through consistent effort. A few good games are not enough. They must continue showing discipline both on and off the court if they want to turn their talent into something meaningful. Timo Cruz has changed significantly since the beginning of the season. His attitude is no longer dominated by anger, and he has become more willing to accept responsibility. Carter's expectations have forced him to understand that talent is only one part of becoming successful. Cruz begins thinking about his future differently and realizes that he has choices beyond the difficult circumstances surrounding him. His relationship with Carter becomes one of mutual respect, with Cruz finally understanding that the coach's strictness was never meant to hold him back. Carter wanted him to discover what he was capable of becoming. The other players are also becoming more mature. Jason and his teammates begin acting like leaders rather than teenagers simply trying to win games. They understand that younger players are watching them and their behavior can influence the entire team. Carter encourages them to take responsibility for that influence. He wants them to leave Richmond not only as better basketball players but as young men who understand how their decisions affect others. As the competition becomes tougher, Richmond faces opponents who are determined to end their run. The players experience moments when their confidence is challenged and they must fight through difficult stretches. Carter stays composed on the sidelines, encouraging them to trust the system instead of panicking. The team responds by relying on the fundamentals they have practiced for months. Passing, defense, communication, and patience become more important than trying to win through individual performances. The pressure of the postseason also brings back an important question: what happens after basketball? Carter continues talking to the players about college, education, and responsibility. He knows that the excitement of a successful season can make them forget how quickly basketball careers can change. Injuries, competition, and circumstances can alter an athlete's future without warning. Education gives them another foundation, and Carter wants them to understand that this is the real reason he has fought so hard for their academic success. The players begin recognizing that Carter's toughest decisions were actually the moments that helped them grow the most. The academic lockout was frustrating, but it forced them to develop study habits. The demanding practices were exhausting, but they taught them discipline. The constant rules sometimes felt unfair, but they taught them how to accept responsibility. Now, when they face pressure during games, they are better prepared because they have learned how to stay focused when things become difficult. The team's unity becomes one of its greatest strengths. Instead of blaming one another after mistakes, the players encourage each other. They know that everyone will make errors, but they also know that a team becomes stronger when its members recover together. Carter sees this development and realizes that the players have finally begun understanding the deeper meaning of his coaching. He was never trying to create a perfect team. He was trying to create young men who could support one another and continue moving forward even when life became difficult. However, success also brings new challenges. The players begin receiving more attention, and some outside influences threaten to distract them. Carter reminds them to remain focused on their goals and not allow temporary excitement to change their priorities. He wants them to remember that their achievements belong to them, but their future still depends on the choices they make. As the most important games approach, the players know that they have reached a point they could not have imagined at the beginning of the season. They have gone from a group of talented but undisciplined teenagers to a team capable of competing at a much higher level. More importantly, they have learned to believe that they can succeed beyond Richmond's expectations. Carter watches his players prepare and understands that his job is no longer simply about teaching basketball. They have already learned how to compete. Now they must learn how to handle whatever happens next. Whether they win or lose, the lessons they have gained throughout the season will remain with them. And as Richmond prepares for its biggest challenge yet, the players step onto the court knowing that the final result will matter, but the people they have become will matter even more. The Richmond team reaches the most important games of the season, and the players quickly realize that the pressure is different from anything they have experienced before. They have worked for months to reach this stage, but now every possession matters. Coach Carter reminds them to stay calm and trust the discipline they have developed. The players understand that their success has never depended on one star player. They have reached this point because they learned to work together, communicate, and remain focused even when things become difficult. As the competition becomes more intense, Richmond faces opponents who are determined to stop their run. The games demand everything the players have learned throughout the season. Carter watches closely from the sidelines, correcting mistakes and encouraging his players to stay committed to the system. When the team falls behind, he refuses to let panic take over. He reminds them that one bad moment does not decide an entire game. The players respond by staying together and fighting their way back. Timo Cruz becomes an important example of the team's transformation. Earlier in the season, his anger and lack of discipline repeatedly caused problems. Now he is playing with greater control and confidence. He understands when to make a smart decision instead of forcing a difficult play, and he begins thinking about how his actions affect his teammates. Carter recognizes how far Cruz has come. The young man who once resisted every lesson is now beginning to understand why those lessons mattered. The other players also demonstrate the maturity they have developed. They communicate during difficult moments instead of blaming one another, and they encourage teammates who make mistakes. Their confidence comes from knowing they have prepared for these situations. Carter's demanding practices have taught them that pressure becomes easier to handle when everyone trusts the work they have already done. The team is no longer simply playing for a winning record. They are playing with a sense of purpose and pride. Away from the court, the players are also thinking about their futures. College opportunities are becoming more realistic, and some of them begin understanding how important their academic improvement has been. Carter continues reminding them that basketball can open a door, but education gives them the ability to move through that door. He wants them to be prepared for life after high school, regardless of what happens during the tournament. The team's progress also proves that Carter's controversial decisions were not made without reason. The academic lockout created enormous conflict, but it forced the players to develop habits that now help them in every part of their lives. They learn to study, manage their time, and accept responsibility. Those lessons have become part of their identity, and Carter can see that the players are no longer the same teenagers who first entered his gym. As the tournament continues, the players face moments when their season seems uncertain. Their opponents are talented, and the pressure can become overwhelming. Carter reminds them to focus on the next play rather than worrying about the final result. This simple approach helps the team remain composed. They begin playing with the confidence of a group that understands its strengths and weaknesses. The Richmond community becomes increasingly invested in the team's journey. People who once criticized Carter now recognize the changes in the players. The team's success has brought pride to the school, but the players' personal growth has become even more meaningful. Carter has shown that a coach's responsibility does not end when the final whistle blows. His influence has reached the classroom, the families, and the futures of the young men he agreed to coach. Carter remains proud but refuses to let the players become satisfied. He knows that success can disappear quickly if they stop working. He continues demanding focus and discipline because he wants the lessons to remain with them long after the tournament ends. The players now understand this better than ever. They may still complain about his strictness from time to time, but they know that his expectations come from believing they are capable of more. The biggest games are now approaching, and Richmond's dream of going farther in the tournament is becoming more realistic. The players have reached a level that seemed impossible at the beginning of the season, but Carter knows that the final test will not simply be whether they can win. It will be whether they can remain true to the values they have learned when the pressure is at its highest. And with the championship dream getting closer, the Richmond players prepare for the biggest challenge of their season, one that will test not only their basketball ability but everything Coach Carter has taught them. The Richmond basketball team enters the final stage of its season carrying everything Coach Carter has taught them. They have become stronger players, but more importantly, they have developed discipline, confidence, and a better understanding of their responsibilities. The pressure is now enormous because the team is fighting for a place among the best and everyone expects them to keep winning. Carter reminds the players that reaching this point is already an achievement, but he refuses to let them become satisfied. He wants them to remain focused and remember that the habits they developed throughout the season will matter long after their final basketball game. The players step onto the court knowing that their opponents are just as determined to win. The game becomes a test of patience and teamwork, with both teams fighting for every opportunity. Richmond does not rely on one player to carry them. Instead, The players trust the system they have practiced for months. They communicate, defend together, and continue encouraging one another when mistakes happen. Carter watches from the sidelines, knowing that the team has reached a point where the players must make decisions for themselves. He has prepared them, and now he wants them to show what they have learned. Timo Cruz demonstrates just how much he has changed. The young man who once struggled to accept Carter's authority is now playing with discipline and maturity. He understands that every decision matters, and he refuses to allow frustration to control him. His journey has become one of the clearest examples of Carter's influence. Cruz has learned that being strong does not mean refusing to listen or accepting no rules. It means having the courage to change when you realize that your old choices are holding you back. The other players are also thinking about what comes next. College opportunities and basketball scholarships are becoming realistic possibilities. But they understand that those opportunities exist partly because Carter forced them to take academics seriously. The players who once believed that studying was a distraction now recognize that education has helped create a future beyond the basketball court. Carter's message has finally become clear to them. Basketball can open doors, but they need education and discipline to keep those doors open. As the tournament continues, Richmond faces increasing pressure. The players know that one mistake could end their championship hopes, but they refuse to let fear control them. Carter encourages them to focus on the present moment rather than worrying about the final score. The players follow his advice and continue competing with confidence. Even when the game becomes difficult, they stay together and refuse to blame one another. Their teamwork has become the foundation of everything they do. The Richmond community watches with growing excitement, proud of how far the team has come. But Carter remains focused on something deeper than the scoreboard. He sees young men who have changed their attitudes towards school, responsibility, and their own futures. The winning record is impressive, but the personal growth means more to him. He knows that trophies eventually become memories, while the lessons these players have learned can shape the rest of their lives. The team continues fighting through the tournament, but the final result becomes less important than the journey that brought them there. Carter has forced his players to confront their weaknesses, challenge their assumptions, and believe that they can achieve more than their circumstances suggested. They have learned to work for success instead of expecting it to arrive simply because they are talented. As the season approaches its conclusion, Carter watches his players with a sense of pride. They are no longer the same group that struggled to follow basic rules at the beginning. They have become disciplined athletes and more responsible young men. Whatever happens in the final game, Carter knows that his biggest goal has already been achieved. He wanted his players to understand that their lives were bigger than basketball, and they are finally beginning to believe it themselves. The final moments of the season are approaching, and Richmond prepares to give everything it has. The players know they may never experience another season exactly like this one. They have faced criticism, pressure, academic challenges, and difficult opponents, but they stayed together. Carter tells them to trust one another and remember everything they have worked for. When the final challenge arrives, the players fight with determination, but they also understand that victory is not the only measure of success. Their journey has already changed them. They have learned how to accept responsibility, how to support their teammates, and how to think about their future beyond the excitement of a basketball game. Coach Carter looks at the players and realizes that the lesson he wanted them to learn has finally become part of who they are. They may remember the victories, the difficult practices, and the tournament games, but the most important thing they will carry with them is the belief that they are capable of creating better futures through discipline and education. The Richmond basketball team's journey finally reaches its conclusion, but the most important victory has little to do with the final score. Throughout the season, Coach Carter has challenged his players to become more than talented athletes. He demanded discipline, respect, education, and responsibility because he understood that their lives could not depend entirely on basketball. Now, as the season reaches its final moments, the players finally understand the reason behind every difficult practice, every rule, and every uncomfortable conversation. They have learned that success is not simply about winning when everything goes their way. It is about continuing to believe in themselves when life becomes difficult. The players give everything they have during their final major challenge. They compete with confidence and refuse to abandon the teamwork that has carried them through the season. Carter watches them closely, knowing that he has prepared them as much as he possibly can. The players make mistakes, face pressure, and struggle against strong competition, but they continue fighting together. Even when the result does not go exactly as they hoped, they do not return to the attitudes they had at the beginning of the season. They have learned how to handle disappointment without allowing it to destroy their confidence. For Timo Cruz, the journey has been especially meaningful. At the beginning, he was angry, rebellious, and unwilling to accept anyone's authority. Carter challenged him because he believed Cruz could become much more than the person his circumstances seemed to be shaping him into. Through discipline and hard work, Cruz learns to control his emotions and take responsibility for his decisions. By the end of the season, he is no longer simply trying to prove that he is tough. He is beginning to understand that real strength comes from self-control, determination, and the willingness to build a better future. The other players experience similar changes. They have learned how important education can be, especially after Carter temporarily took basketball away from them. What initially felt like an unfair punishment eventually becomes one of the most valuable lessons of their lives. They discover that they are capable of succeeding in the classroom when they put in the same effort they give to basketball. Some of them begin looking seriously at college opportunities, while others start thinking about careers and futures they had never considered before. Carter's greatest achievement is helping them realize that they have choices. The final result of the basketball season cannot erase the difficulties the players have faced, but it also cannot take away what they have accomplished. They enter the season as talented young athletes who lacked discipline and direction. They leave it as a group of young men who understand responsibility and the importance of supporting one another. Carter wanted them to believe that their circumstances did not have to determine their future, and now they are beginning to believe it themselves. Carter's decision to prioritize academics created enormous controversy, but the results prove why he was willing to stand against the school and the community. He was never interested in becoming popular. He knew that making the right decision would sometimes mean making people angry. His responsibility was not simply to produce a winning basketball team. It was to help his players become prepared for life. The trophies and victories may eventually fade from memory, but the habits of discipline and education can remain with them for decades. The relationship between Carter and his players also changes completely. At first, they saw him as an outsider who wanted to control them. They resisted his rules and questioned almost every decision he made. Over time, they realized that his strictness came from belief rather than cruelty. Carter expected more from them because he knew they were capable of more. The respect they eventually developed for him was not based on fear. It came from understanding that he had been willing to fight for their futures, even when doing so made him unpopular. The players also begin understanding that basketball was never the destination Carter wanted for them. It was a vehicle that could help them discover discipline, teamwork, confidence, and opportunity. He wanted them to use their athletic abilities to open doors, but he also wanted them prepared for what was beyond those doors. A successful basketball career can be uncertain, but education gives them another foundation. That lesson becomes one of the most important things they carry forward after the season ends. As the story reaches its final moments, the players reflect on how much they have changed. The young men who once complained about studying now understand why Carter demanded it. Those who once reacted with anger are learning patience. Those who once focused only on themselves are now thinking about their teammates. Their transformation is not perfect, and they still have challenges ahead. But they have gained something far more valuable than a winning record: the belief that they can control the direction of their own lives. Carter's work is not finished simply because the season has ended. He knows these young men will still face difficult choices, pressure from their surroundings, and moments when giving up may seem easier. But he also knows that they now have tools they did not have before. They know how to work hard, how to stay disciplined, how to support each other, and how to think about consequences before making decisions. Those lessons can guide them long after they leave Richmond High. The story of Coach Carter ultimately becomes a powerful lesson about leadership and responsibility. A coach can teach players how to shoot, pass, defend, and win games. But the greatest coaches can also influence the people their athletes become. Carter refuses to measure success only through championships. For him, the real victory is seeing his players believe that they deserve a future filled with opportunities. He challenges them because he refuses to accept the idea that their background should limit their dreams. The players now have the opportunity to move forward with greater confidence. Some may continue playing basketball, some may pursue college, and others may choose different paths. Whatever direction they take, they carry the lessons of their season with them. They have learned that talent is only the beginning. Without discipline, talent can be wasted. Without education, opportunities can disappear. Without responsibility, success can become temporary. Carter has taught them to understand all three. In the end, the Richmond basketball team becomes a symbol of what can happen when young people are given both high expectations and genuine support. Carter did not lower the standard because he believed the players were capable of meeting it. His methods created conflict, but they also created change. The players discovered that they could achieve more than they thought possible, both as athletes and as students. The most powerful part of their journey is that the lessons do not end with the final basketball game. The scoreboard can tell people who won a particular night, but it cannot measure the confidence, discipline, and maturity the players gained throughout the season. Those qualities are the true rewards of everything they experienced. Coach Carter looks at the young men he once struggled to control and sees a completely different team. They are still basketball players, but now they are also students, teammates, leaders, and young men thinking about their futures. He knows they will face new challenges after Richmond, but he also knows they are better prepared to face them. The story ends with a simple but powerful message. Winning is important, but becoming a better person is more important. Carter never wanted his players to believe that a basketball trophy was the greatest achievement they could reach. He wanted them to understand that their education, character, and future were worth fighting for. By demanding more from them, he helped them discover that they were capable of giving more. And that is what makes their journey so inspiring. Coach Carter did not simply change the way the Richmond players played basketball. He changed the way they looked at themselves. The season may be over, but the lessons they learned will continue shaping their lives long after they leave the court. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this review, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing movie breakdowns. See you in the next video.